மணலவை கோஷ க்ஷேத்திரமிதில் வள தானெனும் மானமாம் தானிய உளுந்தை நானாரெஞ்ஞான விசார திரிகையில் நானல்லவென்றே உடைத்து பொடித்து
ತನುವಿನ ನೆಲದಲ್ಲಿ ಬೆಳೆದ ಅಹಮ್ಮಿನ ಉರುಳಿಯ ಕಾಳನು ಸುರಿಯೋ ನಾನಾರೆನ್ನುವ ಆತ್ಮ ವಿಚಾರದ ಬೀಸುವ ಕಲ್ಲಳು ನುರಿಯೋ
తనువను నేలను పెంచిన అహమను ఉలవలు ధారగ పోసి నేనెవరిన నెడి ఆత్మ విచారపు తిరుగలి నందిడి విసురు
तन के खेत में उगे अहम के उरद दानों को लिए मन ही मन में कूटते जाओ आत्म विचार के बल से।
Namo Ramana. Prostration to Ramana, who shines as the self in all beings. By his abundant grace, we begin today's self-inquiry sharing. Dilip will start off with a prayer, followed by some reading and some points on the reading and the self-inquiry session. After which, we will have a sharing by me.
ध्यायेत् शारदचन्द्रसुन्दरमुखम् ताम्रारविन्देक्षणम् भक्ताभीष्टवराभयप्रदकरम् कौपीनमात्रोज्ज्वलम् स्वात्मानन्दरसानुभूतिविवशम् सर्वानवर्ग्यान्वकम् श्रीमन्तं श्रीरमणेश्वरं गुरुवरम् योगासनाध्यासितम् ध्यायेत् श्रीरमणेश्वरम् ध्यायेत् श्रीरमणेश्वरम् ध्यायेत् श्रीरमणेश्वरम्। हृदयकुहरमध्ये केवलं ब्रह्ममात्रम् यहमहमिति साक्षात् आत्मरूपेण भाति। हृदि विशास्वं चिन्वतामर्चताव पवनचरणरोधा आत्मनिष्ठो भवत्वम्। We will commence today's self-inquiry session by listening to Bhagavan's Upadesham from this book, Ramana Answers, Self-Inquiry 1900 to 1950, a compilation of all Bhagavan's answers on this subject of self-inquiry or Atma Vichara from 1900 to 1950 by our founder president, Sri A.R. Natarajanji. I'll just read a little bit of the introduction which Sri A.R. Natarajanji has written. He says, there is a single thread running throughout the teachings of Bhagavan Ramana from 1900 to 1950. This is that self-inquiry, an inquiry into the nature of the mind, is not only the straight path for self-discovery, but is also the only path for it. Be it his prose works or poetic works, the underlying note or shruti is that for the uprooting of the I sense in the body, the one effective means is self-enquiry. And further, Ramana, answering one of the questions, gives what this self-enquiry and enlightenment is. So I just want to read that. Ramana's answers are directly based on his own enlightenment. A quotation from self-enquiry is given below as indicative of this. Can the body, which is the insentient as a piece of wood, shine and function as I? No. Therefore, lay aside this insentient body as though it were truly a corpse. Do not even murmur I, but enquire keenly within what is that now shines within the heart as I. Underlying the unceasing flow of varied thoughts, there arises the continuous, unbroken awareness, silent and spontaneous, as I in the heart. If one catches hold of it and remains still, it will completely annihilate the sense of I in the body and will itself disappear as a fire of burning camphor. I start by listening to Bhagavan's Upadesham here. The first question which was put to Master was, Master, what is the means to gain the state of eternal bliss, ever devoid of misery? Bhagavan answers, apart from the statement in the Vedas that wherever there is body, there is misery. This is also the direct experience of all people. Therefore, one should inquire into one's true nature and one should remain as such. This is the means to gaining that state. As Bhagavan says here, which I repeat again, apart from the statement in the Vedas that wherever there is body, there is misery. This is also the direct experience of all people. Therefore, one should inquire into one's true nature and one should remain as such. This is the means to gaining that state. In this present scenario that we are, this first part of the statement where Bhagavan says wherever there is body, there is misery, is quite obvious that we are experiencing, and due to which we are following many rules that we are following. But that is not the most important part. So what should we do becomes the most important question. So Bhagavan therefore says here, one should inquire into one's true nature. This is the vichara. What is my true nature? Am I this body? If so, why don't I experience this in my deep sleep? Or why do I have a different sense of the body in my dream? Instead of simply taking these experiences very casually, we should really inquire. So then only we will try to turn and see what is that one thing which is common within my sleep, between my dream and between my waking. So this vichara is very important. Bhagavan doesn't just stop with saying only vichara is enough. He says, having found one's true nature, one should remain as such. This is the most important part. This is, we can say, as bhakti. The first part of enquiry is the vichara. Once having found one's true nature, one should develop a sense of love, a sense of attraction to that which we have found, that love, and one should ever remain in one's own true nature. This is the means to gaining that state. So by this repeatedly doing the vichara and then holding on to our own true nature repeatedly is the way of gaining that state which is devoid of misery, which is free of misery, is what Bhagavan is saying. Actually, our real state, as we can make out from this, is really devoid of misery. But we feel a sense of misery because of attending to thoughts. It is the thought which makes us move away from our state of non-misery into a state of misery. So we ask, why am I getting so many thoughts? Or why do I have this kind of thoughts which are good sometimes, sometimes bad, sometimes ugly? So the misery comes by attending to the thoughts. Therefore, Bhagavan has given us this Atma Vichara, in which he says, every time a thought rises, and doesn't matter how many number of thoughts rises within us, we should diligently inquire. We should look at it as an opportunity also to inquire to whom is this thought. Once we do that, our attention gets turned away from the thought onto the one who is having the thought. Obviously, it is me. Therefore, there we should inquire there and diligently, who am I then? Then we try to inquire into our own true nature. That is the vichara. And the moment we ask this question, who am I? It is the mind turns inward and remains at the source. We may not recognize it. It is the grace of the Master which makes us turn to the source. We should, because of the lack of knowledge of that, we may again turn outward. But if we can remain with every thought turning inward, we will gain that enough strength or that enough love for that silence of our real nature. This is the repeated doing of this Atma Vichara is what Bhagavan saying is the means of gaining that state which is ever devoid of misery. With the immense grace of Master, doesn't matter how many thoughts we get, no matter how many thoughts we get, what is the quality of the thought, let us do Atma Vichara. Let us inquire to whom is this. Recognize it is for me, and thereupon inquire, who am I? What do I refer to as I? Or where from this sense of I within me rises? So when we do the Atma Vichara like this, with the question, who am I? We will turn and we will be at our source by the grace of the Master. And let us do this repeatedly, as Bhagavan says, that is the only way to gaining that state. Let us, for the grace of Master, with the grace of Master, let's do Atma Vichara. नमो भगवते श्रीरमणाय।
By Bhagavan's immense grace, we have been practicing self-inquiry for the last 15 minutes and meditating on it prior to that. Bhagavan sanctified this path for us when he, as a boy of 16, experienced the fear of death and inquired who or what is dying. He lay down and stretched his limbs as if rigor mortis had set in. He held his breath, and he says he did not even utter I within himself. And then he said, so-called said, because it arose within him the question, well, this body is dead, but with the death of this body am I dead? And in a flash, the self revealed itself to him. Later, Bhagavan says that it was a matter of few minutes. No, not even a matter of few minutes. There is the element of time in it. And he also says that when I questioned, with the death of the body, am I dead? At that point, it was gone. Because for me, there was no concept of something called mind. And this is what Bhagavan is telling as an answer, the very first questioner, Gambhiram Sheshayar, which was read out from the book, Self-Inquiry, 1900 to 1950. 1901. He tells Gambhiram Sheshayar, if we set aside the corpse-like body as a corpse, and then inquire, what is it that shines as I within? See, the moment the body is not, what shines has to be the self alone. But later, while answering Shiva Prakasham Pillai, Bhagavan has given us this methodology of asking as a thought arises, asking for whom is this thought, and getting the answer, the thought is for me. Then asking oneself, who am I? This is as I would say a concession out of his great grace and compassion to the fact that for us, actually, the mind is where we live. And that's why in Ulladu Narpadu, Bhagavan says the whole world actually exists only in the mind. He says it in Ramana Gita also. There is no world apart from the mind. Although it appears as if world and mind rise and set together, it is the mind which comes first. In Satashnam, Dhiya Sahodeti Dhiya Stame Lokastato Dhi Pravibhasya Desha Ulaharivu Ondrai Udithodungu Venum Ulaharivu Tannal Odidum. It is the mind which makes the world shine. And he also explains very beautifully in Ulladu Narpadu that this I feeling that we have is actually a mysterious, illusory knot, a chit jada granthi as it is called, which connects consciousness and jada. Chit jada granthi bandham. Because he says the body is insentient. He's calling it the corpse-like body. The body is insentient. Jada udal nan ennadu. The body doesn't say I at any point of time. The self It doesn't rise at all to say, I am so and so, I did something, I will do something, I feel something. Satchit Udiyadu. Then what is it in us which is saying all this? What is this I feeling? Bhagavan says there is something which rises within the limits of the body, which acts as a bridge between these two. And because we normally link it to the body and through the body concept to various objects in the world, it assumes all the properties of the Jada. When it is turned back towards its own conscious source, it delinks from the Jada and becomes one with its conscious source. If we look at a knot which binds, say, two threads together, when we unravel the knot, what happens to the knot? The knot just disappears. There is no knot. So this, I thought, is a mysterious illusion which is linking the consciousness with the Jada. So the process of self-inquiry is to turn it back to its conscious source. Bhagavan understands our predicament where every experience for us arises in the form of thought. That I am the body is the first primary thought, and thereupon various thoughts are constantly arising in our mind, linked with this primary thought. So what do we have to do? We have to take it back to the source. How? By delinking from the object association. And how does the object association happen for us? It happens in the form of thoughts. So Bhagavan says, as and when a thought arises, catch hold of it right there. As it arises, a thought arises, I must do something. Ask, for whom is this thought? The thought is for me. Who am I? The point is, I can understand what the thought is. I know what the thought is. If I say I am seeing something right now, the seeing is concrete. It is evident to me. What is seen is evident to me. The process of seeing is evident to me. But who is seeing it? Do I know who is seeing it? Is that something concrete? Is the one who is seeing something like the object that is seen? Is the one who is seeing something like the eye which is seeing that object? Obviously not, isn't it? But we never try to question or pay attention to that which is seen. When we try to do that, because it is not something which is concrete, because it is not an object, there can be no thought at that point when we ask ourselves, who am I? Because the I is not an object that we can think of, unless we give ourselves some objective answer, which is not to be given in self-inquiry. So the moment we ask ourselves, who am I? Absolute silence as the result. Because the answer is not available to us. In any case, if we are asking ourselves a question, that means the answer is not known to us. There's no point in asking, who am I? If we already have an answer, ready-made answer saying, oh, I am this or I am not this. Because when we ask a question, when we sincerely ask a question, we must be asking the question because we don't have an answer. No point. It's not a rhetorical question. In English literature, we talk of rhetorical questions. When we say, does the sun rise in the west? That's a rhetorical question. Everybody will say, no, the sun rises in the east. This is not who am I is not a rhetorical question. It's a question which is arising within us as a doubt by looking at our lives, by looking at our waking experiences, which are changing from moment to moment to moment. So many millions of changes have happened in what I call the I. From when I was born, from when I was in my mother's womb, till this moment. And yet, there's one continuous thread of I. Despite all these changes, this is throughout my life. And within every daily experience, in my dream, my body is lying on the bed and I'm undergoing so many experiences. And then there is a deep sleep when nothing is known. So when I wake up, if there is a need, an eagerness to give my life to who I am, because no point in dedicating my entire life to a stranger. No point in gifting away my whole life to a stranger. We wouldn't even give a few rupees to a total stranger. We wouldn't part with a gift to a total stranger. So when it strikes us that I seem to be giving away my whole life to a stranger, without knowing who I am, moment upon moment I'm going on saying I this, I that. So when it hits us strongly, the question, who am I really? If that question hits us, then what will happen is that that question has to remain with us, not only when we sit down for our inquiry, by the grace of the Master, for a few minutes, dedicated inquiry, but the question has to keep coming back to us throughout the day. It has to hit us whenever we are getting lost in some activity, whenever we are getting lost in some emotion. It will come to us. This is an activity. This is an emotion. And that is known to me as a thought. I can see that I am feeling angry. I can see that I am feeling sad. I can see that I am feeling excited. So this is a thought. But who is this I who is seeing it? Who is this I? When we just ask ourselves that, at that moment, the mind has to come to a standstill. By force of habit, it again tries to seek a new object. And very often, it gets carried away in that seeking for quite some time before we remember, before we recall, oh, I'm getting carried away with all these thoughts, but who am I who's getting carried away? And that thought comes back, and the attention comes back to the self. This attention resting in the self may or may not be with our awareness to begin with. In the initial part of self-inquiry practice, we may not even recognize that thoughts have halted and that we have tasted the self. It may look as if the whole session of inquiry is only full of thoughts and asking who am I, asking for whom is this thought, then asking who am I. But then there may be some sessions where the question actually becomes a little more intense. In which case, the cessation of thought becomes something little more tangible, little more obvious, and the peace, the silence, which is experienced at that time, becomes little more evident. Then that becomes a reinforcement. But even otherwise, even if we hadn't realized it, something draws us back to the self-inquiry, because the moment the question is asked, even casually to begin with, the mind has to become silent. Once the self is tasted, once the I thought is isolated without other thoughts, what happens? Bhagavan says it cannot remain in isolation because it doesn't have an independent existence. It has to remain either linked with thoughts or merged in the self. It has no existence of its own. So it will automatically merge into the self. And one gets a taste of the self. What happens is gradually that period would start becoming longer and longer. And the yearning to get back to the self would also become stronger. Along the way, one has to remember, because this question comes to many of us, how do I make that steady? Bhagavan answers, practice, more practice, more practice. Because the reason why we have lost it is conditioning. So the way to break a conditioning is in contra conditioning. Really speaking, the self is our own nature. What do we have to do to remain as the self? We don't have to do anything to remain as the self. But it's like the example of health which Bhagavan gives. Health is natural. But what happens when disease comes? We have to do something to get rid of the disease. Breathing is natural, but if there is a nasal block, then one has to do something to get rid of the nasal block. Even though breathing is natural, one may not even be breathing in a natural way. That's what the yoga teacher tells us. You're not breathing naturally. So then we have to learn to breathe naturally. All the breathing is natural. In the same way, since we have disconnected from our natural state, it becomes essential for us to put into practice, turning back to the self. Once one has tasted of the self, then this question, who am I, may not be necessary any longer. Bhagavan says in Ashtakam, when the I thought is not arising, inraham enum ninaivenil pira ondrum, nothing else is there till then. Pira ninaivenil, if any thought arises, that means the I thought is already there. It has already arisen. So pira ninaivenil, hark, for whom? Ek, from where is this thought arising? Asking thus, get back to the source. Get back to the source. If any thought arises, that means the I is already embedded in that thought. Therefore, if a thought arises, ask for who, says Bhagavan, and get back. Get back. So the question, who am I, is a strong reminder to us that we are in a state of amnesia, forgotten our own nature. Bhagavan in fact calls it a drunken stupor. In Ekanga Panchakam he says that one who is drunk and asking himself, where am I, who am I? The state of ignorance is like that. But let us think for a moment of a state of amnesia. We've forgotten who we are. We are comfortably living in another new identity. Some of us might have seen movies also where a person gets in an accident, forgets himself, then goes and lives a comfortable life elsewhere. Then again gets some hint of his original identity. In that case, original identity. Okay. So what happens when that hint starts coming? Can the mind thereafter rest comfortably in this so-called new identity? Please keep going back to the question, who am I really? I don't think this is who I am. I don't think this is who I am. Who am I? So that continuity of practice is what Bhagavan suggests he gives 3 keywords in Appalam song, which are very essential for our practice. He says, Santatam Salippara Santosha Mahave Appalam Vittupar. Santatam, continuously, always. He also says in one of his stray verses that you have to practice inquiry in waking, dream, and even in sleep. All urakkathil surutti. Ninavil surutti, kanavil surutti, all urakkathil surutti. How would we be able to practice in deep sleep? If we practice during the waking hours, automatically it will continue in the dream. If we practice during the waking hours, it will come to us when we lie down before going to sleep. The question will arise, who am I? Who am I who is lying on this bed? Who am I who has been through this whole day thinking, I must do this, I must do that, I am this, I am that, I am that, identifying with thousands of rising entities based on this entity, primary entity called this I am this body. Who am I? And when that question comes to us, before we fall asleep, and we hold on to that question, that thread will continue through the dream, through the sleep, and come back to us. It will support us through the sleep, and it will come back to us on waking, to continue with us through the next day. So Bhagavan says, continuous thread, Santatam. At the same time, a dedicated time for self-inquiry every day is also of great importance. This Bhagavan has told Humphreys in 1911. And he has told Humphreys, give some time to self-inquiry every day. Give 20 minutes to self-inquiry. But he didn't stop at that. He told Humphreys, no matter what you're doing, no matter what you're engaged in, let your attention not be on the objects that you're seeing, not even on the process of seeing, but on that which sees. This he has told him repeatedly, 3-4 times he has told Humphreys, not on the objects that you're seeing, not even on the process of seeing. There is no witnessing even of a process. I am seeing this. Sakshi Bhava, but who is seeing on that which sees? So he says, one, a dedicated time every day, and he tells him, don't expect that something will become visible, something will come to be known right away. It will take time, it will take its time, but it will reveal itself, and its impact on your life will reveal itself in an unconscious manner. You may not even be aware of the impact. In fact, you should not be aware of the impact of self-inquiry, because if I start thinking that because of self-inquiry something is happening to me, then I have to start questioning that as well, because who is experiencing the fruits of self-inquiry? That question will also come back. So Bhagavan says, but it will be known. In your dealing with people, in your dealing with events, in the whole of your life, the impact of this inquiry will show itself, and it will bless you. That's what he tells Humphreys. He tells Humphreys, I have given you this teaching as a master to a disciple. And by that becoming available to us, we can say, Bhagavan is telling us this as a master to his disciple. He has accepted every one of us as his disciples to reveal this path and to remain as the guide from within. Externally, by his words, by his satsanga with fellow devotees, through which we get insights, through all the means of loving him and relationship with him, and internally, because for each one of us, the path is very individual. Our minds are individual. There is There are so many of us at the mind level, as there are so many of us. So our paths are very unique. Although we talk of a similar method, but internally the path is very unique. And in that sense, it is an alone path. It cannot necessarily be shared with anyone else. We are very lucky that to this extent, Bhagavan is allowing us the satsang and sharing. But even then, in that path within, there may be dark moments, and in all those moments, there is the love of Sadguru shining as a self within, which is just taking us, not just by hand, actually embracing us and taking us within into its fold. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya.
अपार सच्चित् सुखवारिराशे यस्योर्विमात्रं भुवनं समस्तम् गुहाहितं तं रमणं गभीरम् चिन्ताविहीनं हृदि चिन्तयामि।